welcome everyone to the Switch for Good podcast. Here we are. I'm Dotsie Bausch, and I'm here with Alexandra Paul, my loveliest co-host ever in the whole wide world.
I'm your only co-host, but so far, thank God you haven't fired me, Dotsie.
This is true. This is true. So I have a thank you for our listeners, because as you recall, over the holidays, we did probably for the beginning of 4 or 5 of the shows is some shout outs to fundraising for Switch for Good, because we love doing this podcast and we have a ton of passion around it, but passion does not keep it on the air because it costs a little money. So I want to say thank you to our listeners, because they stepped up and we got some incredibly generous donations. So I have a few fun events to invite all of our listeners to. Of course, you do have to be in the LA area. Unless you want to fly to one of these events, we will welcome you with wide open arms. But coming up, first of all, February 15th, which is a Saturday, the opening of Seabird's vegan restaurant, right, which is in South Coast, which is the largest grossing mall in America. And so it is the very first fully high-end, fully plant-based restaurant in a mall in America, which is crazy exciting. They are doing the event as a grand opening, and all of the proceeds are going to Switch for Good, which is just lovely and so nice. And the owners, Bill and Stephanie, are a big fan of yours and the podcast, and they listened to every episode, and they got a hold of us and said, this is where we want the money to go. So everyone out there in the whole wide world is invited to that. So that's the evening of February 15th, which is a Saturday. And then February 20th, which is a Thursday, is a party and celebration, which also the proceeds will go to Switch for Good. But it is a party for the launch of the Legends of Change book, which is written by Rebecca Frith. She's coming on in a few weeks to our podcast, actually.
And you are interviewed in that book.
I am. It's a compilation of about 80 essays from women in the movement that are change makers. And so they are going to also live stream a podcast with a couple of us as guests on the Plant Proof podcast. And so that's just going to be a fun night of great food, of course, great vegan food, the live streaming of the podcast, and just a big party. So for ease of use, you guys, if you want to come to either, yes, it's going to be on our social media channels and you can look there. But if you want to come, just email me, info@switch4good.org, and we'll get you tickets and make sure that you're taken care of. So come hang, right?
Yay. Well, that's great. Well, maybe our guest will come hang with us too.
That would be super cool if he flew in.
Yeah, it would make the events even more wonderful, because he's a very energetic, funny, smart man. I want to introduce Eric Lindstrom, and he's here to prove that anyone can be dairy-free or vegan and like it. He's a former self-proclaimed carnivore who was raised on biscuits and gravy. But Eric is now the director of marketing for Compassion Over Killing, a plant-based nonprofit, and he's also the author of 2 vegan books, The Skeptical Vegan and The Smart Parent's Guide to Raising Vegan Kids. He has not given up his biscuits and gravy, though. He just eats the vegan version. Welcome, Eric.
That is right. Well, thank you, Alexander, and thank you, Dotsie. I'm so excited to be here. I'm a fan of both of yours. And to be a part of what you're doing, and to be just to be on this podcast is such an honor, because we're all in this together, right? This has become this movement that right now has reached this incredible tipping point. Like we're at this in 2020. They said 2019 was the year of the vegan. 2020 is set up to be even bigger than 2019.
Yes, I think we're nearing that 10% of the population that's 100% committed, right? And that's when we're supposedly going to hit that tipping point, and it is this year. It is this year. So before we jump in, for those of us who are watching, can you tell us about your friend that's behind you?
my big fat hippo friend. So, everyone has an animal that they love. Of course, I'm going to choose a vegan animal. I'm going to choose a plant-based animal. I'm going to choose a plant-based animal that's a little girthy, like me, right? And so this hippo represents me. They're cute. They're funny. You think they're adorable. They're actually quite ferocious. You don't approach a hippo unless you know what you're going up against. And just the fact that they're plant-based, all of these gigantic, the biggest animals on the planet eat nothing but plants. And I have so much respect for hippos that when I set up my new office, on the opposite wall, in fact, I have a painting of a giraffe whose entire neck is covered in vegan tattoos. So it's a little bit of a jungle vegan theme going on here. But yes, I haven't named my hippo yet, so I have to come up with a name for him.
Oh, we clearly need to do that.
Well, for those of you who are not watching the YouTube channel, it's not a real hippo behind Eric. Yeah. It's a painting of a hippo. But Eric, 15 years ago, you would have wanted to eat that hippo because
you ate some exotic animals, dude.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So for those of you who read my book, there is a chapter. Well, actually, the first third of the book, the first book, The Skeptical Vegan, was about how much of an omnivore with strong carnivorous leanings I was for the first half, maybe third, if I lived to be 120-ish. The first third of my life, I was eating animals. I was unapologetic about it. It was part of my culture. It was part of my upbringing. It was part of my everyday. And Alexandra, you're almost half joking about me eating a hippo because I ate a lot of weird and exotic animals and thought nothing of it. And so at, I think around age of 42 or 43, I made the switch overnight to 100% plant-based vegan diet and haven't looked back. So yeah, I wouldn't eat a hippo today. I would love to get a hippo hug though.
Sounds like that's dangerous though.
You were, but I mean, you're not just even your average meat eater, because in one sitting you ate 68 chicken wings. So you were a meat eater and proud of it.
Yeah, that seems impossible to me now, because when you do the math on 68 chicken wings, you realize exactly how many chickens that is. And the person who was with me also ate 68 chicken wings. It was an all-you-can-eat chicken wing and all-you-can-drink beer
68
event.
chickens total.
Yeah, well, it's 34 chickens,
right? But both of you did it.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, yes, of course, yeah.
That's a lot of lives.
It seems very grim to me. And part of, I mentioned in my first book, again, about transitioning to a vegan diet, part of it was this epiphany I had. I happened to be in New York City. I was sitting on a bus on my way back to upstate, and I looked out the window, and this is when I was probably vegan for maybe a month. And I looked out the window and I saw someone eating meat off a wing. And that was the first off a bone. I'm sorry. It was the first time I had seen someone watch them tearing meat off a bone. And it was one of those moments of, what was I thinking? How did I do that? How do people continue to do that? When you talk about an evolution, we are clearly going to evolve away from being a species that chews meat off of other animals' bones. That doesn't make any sense to me anymore. It's very, very caveman-like to me at this point. But at one point, that was who I was.
I think any time that we get close enough, Dr. Neil Bernard was on, and remember he told us about, he stopped eating ribs, not all meat, but ribs, when he had to go in and work on the cadaver and cut his rib cage open and look at the clogged arteries. And so, but it wasn't even the clogged arteries. Yes, that's all from all the butter in the meat. It was literally opening up someone's rib cage, and that was like, those are ribs. And he said, I couldn't eat another rib after I walked out of that afternoon.
Yeah, he was looking at it another way.
Right. If we allow ourselves to just get close enough to what the reality is and what it actually is, it's powerful.
Yeah, I agree.
How is your health? Because you even had a website called meatbucket.com where you
we have to talk about that.
Yeah, we have to talk about that. So I don't know, you want to talk about meatbucket.com, or do you want to talk what a vibrant, healthy man you were eating all that meat?
It's so embarrassing now. Meatbucket.com. It was a short-lived idea to sell literally buckets of meat, dried meats and things like that. And again, at that time in my life, I had zero thought about those being animals, those being sentient beings.
Right.
That this bucket was filled with corpses. That whole thing just didn't register in my mind at all, which, by the way, and a lot of what you do with Switch4Good, and I'm hoping to do both through my books and my work with Compassion Over Killing, a lot of this is hitting people where they are and letting them make their own discoveries on their own. Because I could preach this to many, many people, and they're never going to make that connection with me telling them to make the connection. It's when these things are suddenly, as you said, Dotsie, when you suddenly change your perspective, you change your own way of looking at these things, that it changes everything around you. And so all of those past events, all of the past dietary choices I made were finally catching up with me. And I was at a point where I knew I had to make a change. And I didn't ever in a million years think it would be as radical seeming at the time as going vegan. And I can tell you that within the first month of struggling, I called it struggling, it doesn't seem like it now, struggling with a vegan and plant-based diet, after the first month had passed, I started to already feel, I can't think of a better word other than cleansed. I started to feel lighter. And even if I wasn't losing weight, even if I wasn't getting all the promises that I was thinking I was going to get by giving up all of those bad foods, I could tell that I was on the right track. And so within that first year, again, as a man in his early to middle age, my doctor's visits were suddenly a turning point. Everything was completely different. The weight that I had lost, my cholesterol level, the doctors were looking at my chart saying, whatever you're doing, keep doing it.
Can you be specific about any of that for our listeners?
I had lost 30 pounds at 4 belt buckle loops at one point. I've since discovered there's a lot more good vegan junk food now. So I don't want to talk about that because that's my new addiction. But at the time, it was a weight loss that felt great. It was I was no longer like winded. Little things like to a doctor because I said I feel winded after climbing a flight of stairs, thinking there was something that was wrong with me. Yeah, the thing that was wrong with me was I was eating poorly and I weighed too much. And so I was just putting a strain on my body. Not quite. No, I just avoided that. Okay. I feel like I hit that at the right point because I'm at an age now, having been vegan for 8 years, I'm at a point now where my friends are starting to be on medications. Yeah. When you get to your mid-50s, you see them starting to say, hey, if I just take this, I can eat whatever I want. Or I just take one of these a day and I'm going to be fine, as opposed to making just a really smart decision on changing your diet.
Mm-hmm. So was it your weight that when you say, I knew I had to change something, what was it that was compelling you to even go in this direction after loving so much?
Yeah, your aha moment.
Yeah, well, that's the bet that I refuse to lose, right?
But you said before you were thinking about it. I want to talk about how you actually made the change, but you hinted that you were sort of feeling like something was not right.
Well, again, I think just the way you feel. You feel heavier, you feel less active, you feel less vibrant. All of the things that just sort of you start to feel like you're dragging around a little bit. And then when I was provided an opportunity to challenge myself with a whole new dietary change, it was me just sort of like thinking, what the heck, I might as well do it now. Again, thinking at that point, Alexandra, that it was going to be 30 days. The first part of me going vegan was loosely based on Colleen Patrick Goudreau's book of the 30-Day Vegan Challenge. And so I just thought I'd make it through 30 days. I'd feel great. I'd reintroduce a couple of things here and there and just look back at that as a lesson, not realizing not only how it would change my entire health, like my person, but my entire career, my whole life just completely changed with the book deals, the YouTube channel, and a career in animal protection that, I never in a million years would have dreamt 9 years ago.
So tell us about this bet and how you went from happy but not so happy, a little overweight carnivore to a vegan overnight.
All right. So my wife has celiac. So she was already on a restricted diet. She was wheat-free. And she was suffering from what I like to call lactose denial syndrome. So she didn't know that she shouldn't be drinking milk and eating cheese and things like that. She just knew it didn't make her feel great. And so she came home with a copy of Colleen's book and said, I'm thinking of going vegan for 30 days. And that was the real moment of my life where things changed, because to this day, I don't know why I just said, I'll do it with you. Just being supportive husband, obviously we were sharing the household, so we'd be sharing meals. I do a lot of cooking. And so I thought this would be a good way to sort of like change some of those habits, change my kitchen, my rapport in the kitchen. And so I thought, well, let's just do it. We'll do 30 days and we'll both see how we feel. And so that was on January 7th of 2012. And so I went to bed the night before having eaten chicken wings. And I woke up the next morning wondering if I was having to eat quinoa or, kale for breakfast or some weird food, right? So I followed Colleen's book sort of on a day-to-day basis to see what to expect. I was wondering why I wasn't feeling all that different. I was saying, like, why aren't there more options for vegan foods in things like vending machines? I kind of felt like I was supposed to be eating in a vending machine for some reason, or at a gas station. Like, you go to a gas station and these things are going around on a conveyor and there's nothing there. I mean, there might be today, actually. Things have changed that much in this shorter period of time, but there was nothing there for a vegan or for a plant-based person. So I felt all of that whole first 30 days was me just grumbling and griping. And that's when I started my blog called The Meaty Vegan. So I thought I was going to document how I would never stay vegan. And so those first 30 days were supposed to be me just proving that veganism is not the way to go and that this diet is restrictive and that I was having more fun as a meat eater. And so we made it through the first 30 days. And on the 31st day, I thought my wife was going to crack. I thought she was going to eat cheese. I thought for sure she was going to run right out, buy a block of cheese, and start in, and then she and I could just get right back into it. And so I asked her on the 31st day, I said, so what do you want to do from here? And she's like, well, I feel good. You feel good. Let's, maybe you want to keep it going. And I said, well, let's make it interesting. Let's turn this into a bet. I'll bet you will eat cheese before I will eat anything that's not vegan. At that point, it probably would have been meat. But it became the bet that, again, 8 years later, I refused to lose. So through all of that, I never once turned back. I never once cheated or have those, cheat days that some people talk about. I actually got rid of all of my non-vegan clothes. Like, I had some really nice silk shirts that I loved. I got rid of my leather belts, my leather sneakers, my leather coats. I wanted to be all in. If I was going to go vegan, as I understood it at that point, I wanted to not be called out. I wanted people to understand that I was being serious about this. So I did it, and I'm still vegan. She's still vegan. We're raising 2 vegan kids, which was the reason for the second book coming out, which, by the way, Dr. Bernard wrote the foreword for.
Right.
And so it's this bet that, again, when you ask me, what did you actually bet? That's where the whole thing is sort of like, you got to be kidding me. Like, I can't believe the bet was that small. So it was if you lost the bet, you would have to watch the other person clean the house for 3 months. So you're sort of off duty for having to clean the house, but you also have to be watched by the other person. So it was a little tiny bet, but it turned into, again, something that totally changed my life.
So we got to go back a little bit, because everybody is hearing that, there was this bet and you weren't feeling all that awesome anyway, and you began feeling a lot better after the 30 days. But there's a big difference between changing your food and changing your entire house and wardrobe. There had to, or maybe not, but was there some kind of soulful connection? Like, what was that journey that really made you throw away those leather coats or take them to the Salvation Army? Yeah, there's more there.
Well, there's those epiphanies, Dotsie, that there's things that I was observing. I'm an introspective person, like I'm an artist. I sort of look at things maybe a little bit differently. And so when, during the first 30 days or a couple of months of trying a vegan diet, I live in upstate New York, and there are cows everywhere peppering the hills. Mm-hmm. And I can remember like stopping and looking at the cows and saying, they're like big dogs, like they're no different than pets to me. Now, I'm just looking at them and saying they have as much of a right to life as any being on this planet. It's the whole speciesism thing that I feel like these cows want to be left alone, and they obviously don't want to be bred. They don't want to be, tortured for milk, of course, for human consumption. And so along the way, I started to realize, I started to make that connection. You know, that's what vegans call it, is making the connection. And so I don't know if there was one moment, I don't know if there was a handful of moments, but it definitely started to feel right to me. It started to feel like I was onto something. And now in hindsight, I definitely was. I mean, besides, again, all of the positive changes in my life, I really think that the future is vegan. And I think that I got in there at the right time. I got in there right before the good vegan cheeses came out. In fact, if you read my first book, most of what's in there in terms of availability of vegan options is completely outdated. And the book is 3 years old. You know, so much has changed in a handful of years to make it a ridiculous notion right now, in my mind, why anyone would consume dairy first and foremost, and then meat. Why would you ever do that? And then eggs, you know? So I think, again, looking back, it was a good network, a good community. Sure. You know, you guys live somewhere where you do have a big community, a big sort of vegan availability. There's the East Coast, West Coast thing. We've got these pockets of a lot of, we have 30 vegan friends. We'll host a vegan Thanksgiving, and as many as 30 vegans will show up in a small town like, you know, Ithaca, New York. So having a community behind us was a big part of it, knowing we weren't alone, you know. And so if anyone's listening, I should hope so.
They definitely are.
For those of you who are listening, find a community. If it's an online community, or if it's one or two friends in a town nearby, if there's no one directly where you live, that definitely helps. I mean, we definitely had a good support network.
So when you went vegan, just for the folks who are listening, who are trying to take dairy out of their diet, or maybe meat and dairy, maybe take and their clothes, how was it in the beginning? Were you a junk food vegan? You were a junk food omnivore. How did you make? Is that your? So we have a lot of guests on to talk about a whole food plant-based diet.
Sure,
and I don't think that's so much your focus, because you're actually very good at veganizing anything an American wants to eat, and a lot of what we want to eat is not healthy. I join you in that.
I was going to say, are you judging me?
No, we're not. That's why it's great to have your point of view, because
I know
everyone thinks that eating dairy-free or vegan. I remember people saying, one time saying, my brother who's been vegan for 35 years or maybe 40 years now, somebody said to me, your brother's a hypocrite because he smoked at the time, because he smokes. And I said, wait a second, veganism and smoking are not, but they are. You don't have to be healthy and vegan. It's the motivation can be many, many things. Right. Health can be one of them, but there's other reasons.
That's why being vegan for the animals is the best way to be.
Then you can smoke.
I love animals more than I love myself. So
have French fries and beer.
Exactly right. If you follow my Instagram at the Skeptical V, Alexandra, you'll see I know exactly what you're talking about. Everything I post is wildly popular because it's exactly what everybody who isn't vegan, everyone who has addictions to pizza and burgers and French fries and mayo, like just things dripping with mayo, that's what I'm eating now. And so it's not healthy. But I do have to back up for a second here, because when I did start, I was trying more of the whole foods plant-based perspective. So T. Colin Campbell is a personal friend of mine. He happens to live in Ithaca. So he's, of course, the granddaddy of the whole foods plant-based movement. I know Gregor. He actually went to high school near me. And then Dr. Bernard, a lot of those guys who really, really know how to eat right. They're right, by the way. That's where I would love to be. And that's kind of where I started. So the beginnings of my marketing, I had done marketing and advertising for years for corporations, like large organizations and corporations in New York. And when I first opened my vegan advertising agency, one of my first clients was Miyoko Shinner, but a lot of my other clients were the T. Colin Campbell Center for Nutrition Studies and Remedy Food Project, this guy named Benji Kurtz.
Oh, yeah. I spoke there this year. That was a great retreat. We'll talk about that. Wow.
Was that in South Carolina?
No, it was in Oregon.
Oh, yeah, he is amazing. So Benji and I are good friends. And so he's someone else, too, who knows that you can thrive on a whole foods plant-based diet. When I say thrive, I mean if you can fuel yourself with that, you're going to feel amazing and you're going to live forever. And so if you're wondering how you live forever, eat like that because you could do it. So I started off in my vegan journey thinking that way, and partly because there weren't that many great options at that point for more vegan junk food. So I was starting off by saying, I'm going to make this from this cookbook. I'm going to make this. There's a Whole Foods plant-based, macrobiotic, gluten-free vegan dinner here in Ithaca that we attend all the time. Their food is incredible and very, very healthy for you. And so I get that. I understand that completely. And then I started to veganize everything I grew up with. So for those people who think you can't eat what you were eating, I'm proving you can. You're giving up nothing. Like when you realize that that pesto itself, by the way, Trader Joe's kale pesto is off the chain. That stuff is incredible. So you cook up some pasta and you just stir in their pesto, which is filled with kale, so it's also healthy. And you have that with some garlic bread that has some melted Violife cheese on it, and a side salad with some Just Ranch or Follow Your Heart Caesar dressing or whatever. You're eating an entire Olive Garden meal. You will be so full of carbs, but you'll be so, you won't be missing anything. And so every single meal can be like that. Every meal can be what you had growing up or what you had or what you thought you'd be missing. So things have changed quite a bit, but back to your original point that I honestly wish I was coming on your show to say a whole foods plant-based diet is the best. It is the best diet. It's optimal for human health.
Right.
There, I said it. Right. Tom Campbell is a medical doctor.
We actually are glad that you're not. I mean, we all know that. We're glad that you offer a wider perspective of a dairy-free vegan diet. So please don't apologize. That's one of the reasons we wanted to talk to you, because I know that for me, when I transitioned, I ate a lot of processed vegan food because it was easier. It didn't have to think. And so I could just grab it off the shelves. And I think a lot of people do that. You actually were an anomaly then if you went healthy first and then gradually went, because I've gotten healthier over time and don't wonder so much what I can eat. So, yeah. And you hear a lot from people you wrote a book called The Skeptical Vegan. You hear a lot from skeptical people who will fight you on the fact that it's easy to go vegan, because that's one of your premises, is that it's not that anyone can do it. So if I could ask you a few questions and what your response is, because it would help our listeners who are vegan to talk to their friends who offer up, non-vegan friends who offer up these excuses. So what about... I live in the Midwest, I live in the South, there's no vegan food there. What do you say to folks?
Well, again, while Cornell University is here in Ithaca, New York, middle of nowhere, we don't have a Whole Foods, we don't have a Trader Joe's, we don't have a Costco. I'm seeing all these Costco people coming, filling their trucks with all this Beyond Burgers they're getting at Costco now for like a super low price. I'm like, I want a Costco. So I kind of live in a middle of nowhere kind of place where there aren't a lot of vegan options. We have a co-op. And so a co-op is almost in a lot of, it's in a lot of towns. And so co-ops often cater more toward their members. They make sure that you can request items, that you're maybe looking for. So if you do truly live somewhere where there aren't options, I would say that is a convenient excuse. Because you can always shop online. I would say the better excuse is I live in the middle of nowhere and I'm broke. And then it truly becomes a little bit more challenging to just say things like, well, beans and rice aren't expensive. Pasta with, a homemade pesto. I can make a pesto in 2 minutes in my blender. You can make meals that are affordable and satisfying. But to be like remote and remote in terms of no community around you can be challenging. And so I would say that if someone listening is in that situation and they're looking for support, I'd say go on social media to build a community. I would say do what you can to create these meals that are truly satisfying to you, even if they become sort of regular in your diet. You're saying, hey, I've eaten pasta 3 times this week. That's fine, because if you're doing it for your health, you're doing it for the animals, and you're doing it for the planet. And so it's a small price to pay for the upside of the rewards of being vegan. Mm-hmm. So I would say stick to it. And if someone's truly struggling, just reach out to me. I love to be people's mentors. I love to prove to them that they can do it. I want to be there to support them, as you all are. So, yeah, I wish them well, but I'm luckily not in that situation. I do sympathize with people who do have those challenges ahead of them.
And there's billionvegans.com. If people don't know about that, it's literally like Amazon for vegans. Everything is on there, and you can get that delivered.
Milk, guys, oh my gosh.
Yeah, I'm with you though. Honestly, if you buy in bulk and in season, and you're in the middle of nowhere and you're broke, it's very inexpensive. I mean, it can be as inexpensive as the fast food diet, right? And that's why so many people lean into the drive-through, right? Because it's like $2.99 for an entire meal. But if you are dealing with all sorts of legumes and grains and vegetables that are in season, right? That's when they get crazy pricey, when you're trying to buy blackberries in December. Like, no, they're going to be $10 for like a little pint. But if you do those things and you have a great spice rack, which spices are not expensive either, especially if you build it up and then they last a long time. Yep. You can do some pretty exquisite cooking that is cheap and easy and totally awesomely healthy. And that's including no junk food, vegan junk food. Like if you don't, right? Like you're going to be really healthy if you live in the middle of nowhere and you're broke. You're going to be eating whole food plant-based, right? Like you're not going to be buying Beyond Burgers. Yeah.
Yep.
What do you hear mostly from people who resist going vegan? What are their excuses, and what do you say to them, especially your friends, because you grew up with people until your 40s you had a whole clan of friends who ate carnivore, omnivore, and now here you are. What do you hear from them?
To be honest, again, at the age that I'm at right now, most of my friends have kids, a couple of kids. Some of them are already in their teens or older. So they see what I'm doing and they want to be a part of it. They know what's right. Some of them are athletes, they run 5Ks, they're bicyclists. They know that their recovery is going to be faster. They've seen it, Dotsie. I mean, they've seen the movie. They know what they should be doing, but they say, I got the kids to also contend with. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I could get my partner to go vegan. The challenges that they're facing are more like environmental to themselves. The barriers are within their households in most cases. And so I offer them advice on what they can do to introduce plant-based diets to their family that they don't even know they're eating a plant-based diet. Like I said, you can make an amazing Italian meal, Mexican food, like you can put out tacos. No one's going to say, where's the meat? When you have soy chorizo, also from Trader Joe's, that's incredible. So there's things that you can make within your house to get other people on board. And then a lot of these individuals, and I'm trusting them on this, say that they're going to make these changes in the coming years. So they know where they're going in terms of their health. They know where they want to go in terms of their diet. They can see the trend of a whole foods, plant-based or vegan diet, and they want to be a part of it. And so they're waiting for their kids to go away to school, or they're waiting for their kids to be less reliant on them feeding them. So, it's more like if you're single and by yourself, it's a whole different, or single with a partner who's also going on the journey with you. It'd be a lot easier in that regard than it is trying to bring the entire family on board.
I don't know when it became okay to have your kids have a say in what they eat. I grew up with this is your food, and this is what you'll eat, and if you don't like it, I guess you'll be hungry. I mean, that's part of it, right? It's just
But also, you wrote the Smart Parents Guide to Raising Vegan Kids, so just hand them the book.
That's the big part of it. Is that I interviewed I think over 12 other parents for the book, because I've got my own experience, I've got my own kids, we've got our own challenges. But, the two little ones that we're raising are different than two teenagers who are just moved into a blended household with another teenager who's being raised by his vegan mom. There's all these different scenarios that I wanted to make sure I covered in this book. Mm-hmm. But the bottom line is, and bottom line meaning fiscally too, as you're saying, Dotsie, until you have a job or a car, you're not feeding yourself. You have to eat what we're giving you. And so you want to make sure it's nutritionally balanced. You want to make sure they're getting what they need, as far as for their own personal health. But also you're giving them foods that they're going to eat a lot of. Like our kids they prefer broccoli over candy. It's like the greatest thing ever when you see our kids passing on cookie tables saying, is this vegan? Is this vegan? Is this vegan? Nope, 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 nope. And they're just like, well, then I'm not going to eat it. And they'll grab an apple. And I'm just sort of standing back going, oh my gosh, how lucky are we? They're there. They know what's going on. And so I think you can get there. But yeah, until they can shop for themselves, they're kind of like stuck eating what we give them.
That's something that happened to me. I never had a huge sweet tooth, but I definitely had a sweet tooth. I definitely ate something sweet every night. And after moving over to vegan, mostly whole food, plant-based, I don't have a sweet tooth anymore. I mean, so much of those cravings has changed. I think it tastes so much sweeter than it ever did, right? Because we know that the meat and the dairy and the saturated fat really deadens your taste buds. And so now everything is so much sweeter. So I want an apple more than I want, I don't know, sort of vegan dessert even. It's just like, I don't crave it anymore.
The perfect example, and again, I got a lot of flack for this in the second book, because Fruity Pebbles, Barney and Fred Flintstone are on the box. Fruity Pebbles are vegan. And I'm like, well, I got to try them. I had them as a kid. So I pour a bowl of Fruity Pebbles. Like even thinking about it right now is kind of grossing me out. But pour a bowl of Fruity Pebbles and then I pour some almond milk over it. And the first bite tasted like paint. It tasted like petroleum. It tasted so fake in terms of like, what are they trying to do here? What kind of fruit is this supposed to even taste like? Yeah. I couldn't eat it. It was disgusting to me. And so your tastes do change. You realize that an apple is better, that some apples are even better than other apples. You start to understand what you really crave and what is a delicious dessert. And that brings us back to the whole foods plant-based diet, because you can put together a delicious, almost like a pudding with a cashew cream. And that's going to taste better to you than, frosting from a can.
Yes. Yes. Where is, so important to ask this, Mike, your partner in meatbucket.com, is Mike vegan-ish, or how's his journey?
He's not.
Okay.
He's not. He would be, I'm not sure exactly. I don't keep that much in touch with him, but he would be the furthest from it, because he would be the one who would, this is one of my least favorite parts about being vegan, to tell you the truth. And you touched on this a little bit, Alexander, a minute ago, but when I say I'm vegan and then a friend says, well, that means I'm going to order twice as much pepperoni on my pizza. It drives me crazy that they're like, oh, you're so like which I'm not, I don't think, self-righteous about what you're doing. You're so like vegan, that I'm going to be more even anti-vegan than you. And while I don't think he's selling meat in a bucket, I do think that he's still feeling that way, that, I'm going to eat what I want to eat. And I can't change people. I mean, there's other people in my book who I mentioned where I'm just like, I just have to let them do their thing. Yeah. As much as I don't want to, as much as I hate what they're doing, I just can't. I don't engage with people. In fact, I'm, again, fairly well known on social media channels, and people will try to troll me or bump into me, and I just won't even engage. I can't.
Yeah.
I want to go back to raising kids on a vegan diet, because I think a lot of people who might be all about veganism for themselves still get swayed by doctors or the fear that they're not going to, that their kids will miss out on something. Tell us what you feed your kids. Your kids are about 7 and 9. Is that right?
No, Cooper will be 7 in March. Paisley's 5.
Oh, so okay. So 5 and
little.
7. So, that's even better. Tell us what they eat on an average day.
Right. So I can simplify this for everyone watching and listening, but if you plan your meals, and I don't mean literally meal planning, which again, I should be doing, like where you have things tucked away for the week. But if you sort of plan your meals based on some foundation of something. And so if that foundation's pasta, because kids love pasta, our household is also gluten-free. So we found our favorite brand of gluten-free vegan pasta.
Which is?
Tinkyata. It's from Canada, and it's amazing. No matter how you prepare it, it always turns out great. The spaghetti, the penne, the elbows, and the rotinis are all, kid approved. They're perfect.
Is that the brand, or that's what it's made of?
That's the brand. It's brown rice.
It's brown rice. Okay. Cool.
So, we can boil a bag of tinkyata pasta and then build up on top of that everything else that we know they like. They like broccoli. They like this kind of sauce. Maybe they only want the pasta with butter and the broccoli as a side. I make a cheese sauce now that's a cashew cream. It's cashews in your soaked cashews in Vitamix with nutritional yeast, a little bit of salt, some garlic powder, and turmeric for the color. And you just blend that up, and it's yellow. It looks exactly like cheese, and you pour that on top of broccoli, and both kids will eat it like they're eating cheesy broccoli, and you can also pour it on the pasta. And so we sort of have that as like a foundation for a meal. And then another meal might be doing the same kind of thing on top of rice, like a bibimbap, like a Korean dish where you're putting a bunch of steamed vegetables on top of rice with some wheat-free tamari, soy sauce. And they'll eat that whole bowl, and they'll ask for more. You can do that on quinoa, all these different grains. So it's a lot of like, it's a different way of thinking, right? I mean, I should probably do some kind of drawing about this. It's building your meals like this up on top of something as opposed to around something. So we were raised that things were circulating around the protein on the plate, that you put the piece of meat somewhere, and then you put some broccoli over here, potatoes over here, and there's this semi-complete, this standard American diet. But if we instead think of it as we're building on top of a grain, because the pasta is made out of brown rice, so it's in itself pretty healthy, and then putting all the different sauces that are nothing but vegetables and spices, and then putting vegetables on top of this, on top of that, and then we give them a pop. They have popsicles now that are made out of vegetables that taste like fruit popsicles. The kids are eating frozen vegetables, which is incredible. So those are like two or three different ideas on things that we do. I have pizza night every Friday. I make a big, again, check me out on Instagram. I make a big gluten-free vegan pizza crust, and then we top that with whatever we want to top it with for that night. So we have a pizza night. Occasionally, like you were saying, we'll do a Beyond Burger, or Gardein has some really nice, like a chicken breast. It's a scapolini. Again, the gluten-free stuff is what's in the house. So there's a lot out there. They're definitely not going. They're not going hungry, and our little boy Cooper will just eat everything. He can walk up to you and you put an onion in his mouth and he'll eat it, which is amazing.
I have a question that I want to really help people with, because kids, taste buds are somewhat simple, and they what the question I get all the time is, if they started omnivore, right, and they're when they were 2.5, 3, 4, 5, and now they're 6, and their parents were like, oh my gosh, we want to move over to whole food plant-based, right? The kids don't like vegetables, like no vegetables, right? Like all they'll eat is fruit and meat and cheese, basically. And so it's a lot easier. Your kids obviously are vegan since birth, so they have developed this palate around loving every single kind of vegetable. Are there any tips or tricks or cheats or hacks that you have that if you've got the kid that's 7 and you're like, all right, we're gonna that will help them transition? Is it kind of like the fake chicken fingers and then putting in, or is it blending up the broccoli with the apple in the Vitamix, and it tastes like a fruit smoothie, but the veggies are in there? And it's
a little bit of both of those. Again, my knee-jerk reaction to your initial question is feed them everything that they love, the vegan version, because they won't know the difference. Chicken nuggets, I mean, again, that's a weakness. I hate to admit that one, but where we live, there's a grocery store called Wegmans, and Wegmans has these frozen chicken nuggets in this family-size bag, and they taste exactly
vegan chicken
like
nuggets.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
I mean, it's obvious, but I just want to make sure he's not having sides of chicken nuggets.
No, I'm not reverting. So we could buy this bag, and we throw it in the air fryer and have a bunch of kids over, and they're running over, and they're eating chicken nuggets dipped in whatever ketchup or ranch, again, all vegan, whatever they're dipping it in, and they literally don't know the difference. Yeah. So we are at a point now where if you want to raise your kids vegan for the animals and for the environment, you can do it with the vegan replacement foods. I don't want to say that that's the healthiest way to raise your kids, and there are ways to sneak really great nutrition into their diets. We make, they're called smoothies, I guess, but it's basically a vanilla shake. So it's frozen bananas and almond milk And my favorite protein powder, by the way, I'm going to go on record as saying this, is Bob's Red Milk, because everyone's sleeping on this stuff. It is so good, and it's packed.
Bob's Red Mill, the guy who makes the oatmeal, the oats
Yeah.
and stuff, he has a protein powder too?
It is unbelievably good. And so a scoop of that into this vanilla shake, and the kids it tastes exactly like a vanilla shake from a fast food place. The kids will suck that down, and in that one like smoothie, they've gotten everything they need for half a day. And so then their lunches are, peanut butter and jelly sandwich, which happens to be vegan, and apple, which they love, Pirate's Booty, the little crunchy snacks that like Cheez-Its, but they're corn and vegan. There's so many things that are just easy grab and go vegan snacks now that it doesn't really address what you're saying about transitioning immediately some kid who only ever ate meat. That's going to be tough. We have a friend she's a medical doctor, and she has 3 sons, and she can't get any of her boys to eat any vegetables. But I'll sit there and watch her cut up chicken for her boys and just shove it, and they'll just eat all this chicken.
Right.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel so lucky.
I mean, that's just scary. I mean, if you're an omnivore, there should be tons of vegetables in your diet to begin with. So
Well, this is one of the reasons that so many kids start having signs of plaque in their arteries at a young age. And I think I read that you said one of the great side effects of raising your kids vegan and them loving vegetables is they are never constipated, and a lot of kids struggle with that.
Yeah, and because they don't
your
have
kids
any
are
dairy.
going to hate if they listen to this in 10 years. They're going to hate you that you said that, but it's okay.
No, I tell it to them all the time because they don't know what the word is. And so for a 7 and a 5-year-old to be like, what does that mean? And I remind them they've had canceled play dates. Your friend couldn't come over because your friend couldn't go.
Whoa.
Like, this is literally the situation that a lot of these kids are in. And our kids are not. It's definitely, they're regular without a doubt.
That's great. Well, you have really helped so many people make the transition. And I want to say that your love of the vegan junk food is actually an asset to our movement because it broadens it and helps us not appear, too whole food pure all the time, because that's not realistic for most people. So
I want to prove that anyone can do it. You can do it at any age. And I'm inspired by you, the two of you, everyone that's around the Switch4Good movement, because I admire how you've brought in the market that my first book, Tracy McWhirter, who wrote By Any Means Necessary, she is wonderful, good friend of mine. When my book first came out, she said, you've done it. You've written a book by a man, for men, to prove to men that they can go vegan. It's not emasculating. It's something that every man can do. And at the time, it kind of was. It's a tongue-in-cheek book. It's very funny.
It is.
There's a lot of things in it that aren't the game changers. And so the things that have changed between now and then, there it is. Thank you. And now there's so many other people who are saying, look, you can be a Tennessee Titan and win a football game and be vegan, right? Like, how amazing is it that we're living in these days?
Yeah. And there's a quote in your book that's anonymous, world peace begins in the kitchen. And that is you personified. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Eric, for being on the show.
I'm so glad we pulled it together. Thanks for all you do. This has been so much fun.
And you keep saying your first book and your second book, so I know there's a third book in the works, and I cannot wait to read it. So,
oh my gosh! Well, I'm going to give it a little plug.
Oh, good.
I don't know. Yeah, it's a fiction book, and it's a romance novel. One character in it's vegan.
Okay.
Fun.
It takes place in London, and it's adorable and it's sweet, and you're going to fall in love with the characters. It's unlike anything I've ever written before. It's been inside me for a while, so I'm excited because it's completely different. But I did make sure that I worked in one character who's a vegan.
Well, thank you for that, and thank you for all the work that you do, Eric.
Of course.
Very cool. All right.
Good to see both of you.
Until next time.
All right. Take care.
Hey, folks. Okay. Back by very popular demand is our plant-powered plate fridge magnet, which you are going to receive for free if you leave us a rating and a review on whatever platform you're listening to this podcast on. So here are the details. Just write your quick review. Does not need to be long, does not need to be a whole story. Just be honest and speak from the heart. Then take a quick screenshot of the review you wrote and email it to us at podcast@switch4good.org. That's podcast@switch4good.org. And include your mailing address so we can send you a power plate. We are doing this because the more reviews we garner, the higher we go in search results, which means more folks will learn about our podcast. So the power is in your hands. Leave us a review and zoom, zoom, your power plate arrives at your doorstep.
So thank you so much for tuning in today. If we helped you in any way, then click the subscribe button and let's keep hanging out together. We have so much more to share with you.
And if you need more information on actually making the Switch for Good, please visit us at switch4good.org for loads of info. And you can subscribe to our mailing list where you will receive all sorts of super cool gifts, discount codes to our very fave dairy-free products, and a lifetime of powerful health tips.
So join us on the journey to Switch for Good. This is the future.